All right? This is where I come and hide when the pressures of the day get too much.
When it's all too much,
I know.
you get rubbered up.
I'm very tired. Does anyone need some Dunlop slicks?
You've got a fair few there.
Or some wet tyres that go faster in the wet round Coombe than most people can do in the dry.
Hey.
George, help! I'm stuck now. Right. I don't know how this links onto dyno stuff, Dav, but...
Wait, we don't need seamless links.
Oh. You ever notice rubber stinks?
Yeah.
What have I got? Pirelli hula hoops. There we go. One more and I can get out of that. Honestly.
It seemed like such a good idea.
It was at the time. Right, as my heart rate increased. This is where I fall over now. Let's get through the intro and we'll talk about dyno stuff.
Let's do it.
This week's rant.
Here we go.
I know. It did happen last week, so dynos. Yeah. Or bringing your car to the dyno. Please make sure there's fuel in it. That was a good one.
Yep.
0 miles when we sat on the dyno. It got dropped off by a company that moved it. And yeah, put it on a dyno and the range was 0 miles. So, you'd think it's pretty obvious, but full of fuel, and the fuel you're going to run it on, there's no point you go into a garage 40 miles down the road to get 101 octane fuel if you're never going to run it on it. Don't worry about the number the dyno spits out. Put fuel in it you're going to run it on. If you're going to run it on Shell 99, great. Or if you have to run it on SO 97 because that's the closest to you, then run it. Put fuel in it that you're going to run it on. God, it's like a working workshop, isn't it?
It's weird.
We moved because it's too noisy in there.
And also, we're talking about a dyno. So.
I know, so let's sit in a dyno. Fill it up on the fuel you're going to run it on. I know everybody wants to chase the pub.
Who's that?
Mitch.
He's such a tool. That's a disciplinary.
Honestly. Can I sack him for that? How would that work?
Dunno.
I don't know whether I put a YouTube clause in his contract. Bloody hell, I just want to get this sentence out.
I know, come on.
Run it on the fuel.
Yep.
Tune it on the fuel you're going to run it on.
Yep.
There's no point you putting fancy fuel in it to get a nice number out of the dyno if you're not going to run it on it, because we tune to the fuel. So obviously the knock window is all around that. Not necessarily the lambda or the fuel quantity we inject, but your fuel quality or the RON has a massive effect on your knock window. So make sure you bring it with plenty of fuel in, fill it to the brim. Never can have too much fuel on a dyno. Never, ever, ever.
With a spare tank in the boot.
Yeah, exactly, right? So that's one thing. 2, tyres. I have had all sorts. I've had cords hanging out of the inside edge. I've had a car turn up with a space saver on when we were tuning a Golf, because he was like, well, it doesn't have that much of an effect. Might not on what the engine's producing, but maybe people not being killed in the dyno is, you know, a big deal. So make sure your tyres are in good order. Make sure your pressures are right. Yes, we do check the pressures anyway, but the amount of stuff we turn up here where the tyres are bald, the cords are hanging out the inside, you know, they're odds across the axle, and you're asking us to give you more power, and then you're sort of displaying your intelligence about it all by having 15 quid part warns on and different across the axle. So just be careful with that. We have refused to work on cars, to have cars on the dyno. We refuse more cars on the dyno because they turn up the engine warning lights on. Now I understand if you've, which you shouldn't do, I understand if you've decatted them or done anything with the emissions, that we obviously then need to work that into our calibration. But we've had stuff turn up with underboost faults, with misfire faults, with bloody sensor problems, and they're like, oh yeah, you get that all the time, I just erase the code and it goes away. So, you know, you want to, basically, if it goes bang on my dyno, it's my problem, as in not the car, you take your own risk with the car. But if it drops all this oil off on the dyno, I've got to get the dyno out of the floor to clean it. Which we do say in our T's and C's that we charge you for. So, and which we'll go through in a minute as well. Make sure there's no warning lights, make sure your tyres are in good order, make sure you've got oil in the bloody thing. Yes, again, we check it. You'd be surprised how often that's overlooked. And just that the car's in good health. If you wouldn't take it for an MOT, don't take it to a dyno, basically. It wastes my time, it wastes your time, and it puts the car at risk, which is why I don't turn it away because you've wound me up or annoyed me that it's got shit tyres on it. I've done it for safety. I've done it to either protect your car or protect us. We get people that want to stand in the dyno cell, and the mark's still in the ceiling. That dent there, can you see it? If I turn let me turn that first set of lights off. Right, so you've got a dent in the ceiling there.
Hang on. Yeah.
Yeah? And if you follow the line, there's one up in the top of the wall there. And my wall is filthy, but there's another one down here. That is where a rim protector come off a Lamborghini on a pole.
Yeah.
And it was, if you'd been stood in this car, you'd been killed. No bullshit. It flew off, it hit my toolbox. I got a dent in the side of my toolbox. And then the clips that hold them on were scattered. Yeah, there's one there, and I think there's one over here as well. Right? And people are like, can I stand in the dyno and film it? Not a chance, mate. So we had someone get arsey about that because they wanted it for their Instagram. And I'm like, you will be killed. If that wheel fit, because it come off, it hit the mirror and then hit my toolbox, and the clips that hold it on literally went around the roof. So yeah, don't stand in dyno cells. It's not cool. Because the other thing as well is stuff like this happens. Melted a strap last week.
Wow.
All right.
That's serious.
Now, strap melted because where it runs under the front of the car, we didn't realise that the screamer pipe had a leak, and the screamer pipe was blowing gas onto the exhaust, and it's melted the strap. And that's fine. I'll just buy a new strap. But if that had gone on the dyno, there's no, because obviously the rear straps hold it from going forward, and the front straps hold it square on a dyno. But there's nothing stopping that car then. Say it's the left strap that gone, the car's just steering right, and you're stood here, and the car just wanders across towards you. So there's things, you know, there's things like that. I've had a car, I had to put a new tyre on because we were doing a pull, and it was an RS6. And on coast down, I knocked the steering wheel and it went all the way to lock. So the wheels went like that on the dyno, but the dyno hasn't stopped. So the dyno's carried on spinning, the rears are fine, and it's 1-2 flat spots in the tyres. That's my cock up, but things like that happen, and you get smarter, and because the second it did it, I was like, which way did that go?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So you've hit the emergency stop on the dyno and stopped it, but it's literally gone, it's just wandered like that, gone all the way to one side on the lock and done 2 tyres. So put 2 tyres on it, but I absolutely pat myself. I pat myself when the thing come off and so dynos are dangerous, which is why then when we say no, that's why I put a nice fancy window in. You can watch through there.
Yeah.
It's a measurement tool. Don't get hung up on the numbers. Everybody's gets all sort of wound up about what it spits out. We always say the same, it's delta gains. So it's where you start to where you finish. Remember, what makes a car feel fast is area under the curve. I'd rather have 10 horsepower at the mid-range than 10 horsepower at the top, because you're not at the top everywhere. You drive through the middle of the revs. So that's what you'd always look for. Chris at VGS used to deal with a tuner because Chris obviously does stuff. They don't do their own calibrations. They're eco-tune dealers, so they use stand stuff. Before that, they were dealing with some SC or S someone tuning, and we did quite a few on his dyno, and they wouldn't make the power, and the calibrator's answer was to put your foot on the brake on coast down. So the coast down loss was higher, so it would measure, say, 300 wheel,
yeah,
and a front wheel drive car will normally do about 70 horsepower coast down, so your flywheel figure is 370, and the tuner's idea was to put your foot on the brake, so you'd get like 80, 90 horsepower and coast down loss, so the car would read 380, 390. Yeah, no mate, I don't do that. And my MAHA will tell you the numbers anyway. Yeah. So when you do a before and after, you can see the before coast down and the after coast down. So we give our clients that transparency, but that's the sort of tit-head stuff you're having to deal with because people are shit at calibrating, basically. Some cars, not every car's the same, which is why people kind of go flash tuners. These eBay idiots who just drive to your house and flash shit on your car. They haven't got a clue what it's doing. They haven't got a clue what it's doing. I am by no means the best, not by a long shot, am I the best calibrator doing this. Stan at EcoTune has forgotten more about tuning cars than I'll ever know. Romain at Syvecs, Dave Rowe at EPS. These boys have been doing this stuff for a long, long time and they know it inside out. And we work with Stan a lot. I work with Romain a lot. Romain's used my dyno. We've built engines for Stan. So pick it. This is another pick your tuner wisely.
Yeah.
Because 75% of people don't do their own. They buy flashes. There's certain stuff we don't do. I would never RS3 stuff. I just use Stan. Why the hell would I do RS3 tunes? I just use Stan. He had the record for fastest RS3 in Europe. Yeah, thanks mate, I'll have some of that.
Yeah.
I'll build the engines, you can tune it for me. Yeah, no worries, that's how it works. Syvecs stuff, MoTeC stuff, I'll do. If I was to say, right now, if I didn't have my own McLaren and someone come to me and said, will you tune a McLaren on Syvecs? I would probably just get Romain down to do it. If it was my car, I'd go and learn. Like the first R8s we did on Syvecs, the Gen 1 was James's and the Gen 2 was John's, but John was like, no, we'll do it ourselves. So again, I don't like learning on other clients' cars, and then other stuff I will do. So it just pick who you want to use properly, because it's always the tuner's fault. But when there's problems, it normally is always the tuner's fault. Do you know what I mean? It's like stage 1, stage 2 stuff's pretty run of the mill. So a stage 1 is basically just a reflash. What I would call a stage 2 is when you've decatted it or sports capped it. And then a stage 3 is when you've changed the turbo. That's how I would kind of do it. So Hurricanes, R8s, Gallardos, they're only ever stage 1s because you never really decat them. But again, it'll only make what it makes. You can't magic horsepower out of them. If the engine's tired, some of them are more sensitive than others to knock, so they pull more power out. It'll make what it makes, and that is it. You can't go, oh, I'm not happy with that number, I want more. It does what it does. Some people will turn down things like knock sensitivity, which I advise against massively. And knock, again, comes back to what fuel you're using, so you've got to be using good fuel. But pick, again, a specialist in your platform. I don't do much on a dyno. I do bag stuff. I do more power runs for Chris at VGS than I tune Golfs, S3s, GTIs myself. They do loads and we'll run them on a dyno. What I use this for is things like this Ferrari or twin turbo stuff, where I've put them on MoTeC, or I'm doing the calibration myself, so to speak. And I haven't got to go to another dyno and pay hundreds of pounds an hour to use a dyno. So this thing, over the life of our V10 development, has been massive, because I would never have been able to got the cars to the position they're in now without having my own dyno. The combustion analysis tool we use, so we've used that on the V10s and we've used that on the McLaren. The profiling we've been able to do on that engine to understand what's going on, to then make decisions about what we need to improve and how we improve it inside the engine is huge. But that's investment, and I wouldn't have made that investment if I didn't have the dyno. So yeah, I don't sit here and flash stage 1s all day long and stage 2 all day long. Mainly it's aftermarket ECU stuff. But pick someone who's specialist in the car you've got, if that makes sense. That makes sense? Yeah. So we get asked quite a bit about doing diesel stuff, riding the dark side. Just go dark side. Why would you not just go to the best diesel tuner in the country? They're renowned for it, just go there. You know, if you were gonna say do the Evos, you go to Simon Norris. If you're gonna do GTRs, you go to Litchfield. Do you know what I mean? They've got dynos in-house, they know the product like the back of their hand. Yeah, we do V8, V10s, R8s, Hurricanes, Lamborghinis. We get them bigger on the McLaren stuff. Pick who would you say is a big Ford RS sort of in-house? Well, it used to be mount tune really, didn't it? You'd go mount tune.
They were. Yeah,
they were.
Definitely.
Now you almost need, and this is where, right? This is a left field. This is almost where magazines were brilliant, right? Because it was almost a handheld directory of who was good.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you'd sit there, and back in the days, you'd go, oh yeah, they're mint at doing this, or they're mint at doing that. Do you know what I mean? And you kind of fall into that specialist thing. And so I can't remember whether we spoke about it on camera or whether we spoke about it off camera. When you had fast car, max power, redline, you had a taste of everything, didn't you?
Yeah.
And now it's gone down this specialist, fast Ford, performance Audi. You kind of don't get opened up to other branches of.
Yeah, it's true.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're kind of stuck in, if you buy fast Ford, that's all you're ever going to see is fast Fords in there.
Yeah.
You're not going to see a red top or That went a little bit off piste, that.
Well, that's kind of where the market's gone with the magazines, for sure. You know,
Yeah.
people, the specialist ones could survive because there was a loyal following for Fords, for classic Fords, for Volkswagens, for whatever it was.
But I think you learned who the specialists were. You learned who was good with what.
Yeah.
You know, and me and you could probably name more good people on stuff that were about 15, 20 years ago than and certainly I could now. I don't really get too involved in what's out there. All I ever hear about is the ones not to deal with, which is not for my place to say, because I don't like that game. I don't like it. The last point to make on dynos is, ultimately, the car going bang on a dyno is your problem. It's not, and there's not much you can do wrong on a dyno that will cause a car to fail. Admittedly, if it's a tuning problem, then that's a different conversation. But if your car comes on my dyno and a cam belt snaps, that is a you problem. So you have to be aware of that. I think even MOTs, don't they? They say it, where they do fast idle tests and smoke tests on diesels and stuff like that. It is a you problem, which is why I always say, make sure your car's in good health. If your car comes on my dyno and grenades itself, you're getting the cleaning bill for my dyno. And that'll be the same on all dynos, because everybody does the same thing when they write their dyno T's and C's. They copy everybody bloody else's. Oh, what does he put? What does he put? So you need to make yourself aware of the liability you carry, and also that it is more aggressive than being on the road. It is harder on an engine than being on the road. A pull I will put a V10 through in 5th gear on my dyno will take 25 to 30 seconds to go from bottom of the revs to top of the revs. You will never do that on the road. Never ever do that on the road. So it is harder on the car, so you've got to be aware of that. And then obviously there's T's and C's into, should the worst happen, where you stand. So just be aware of that, what dyno you go into. Dynos, at the end of the day, a dyno's a ruler. There are bad dynos, and there are even worse dyno operators. but you want to be getting on a decent dyno. Otherwise, the details it's giving you is pointless. If I was to buy another dyno again, this is way beyond what I need, and it's hard to compare MAHA to Dynojet, say, and then you've got Superflow. These hub dynos are coming in now, but I never really wanted a hub dyno because they don't work on Artronics, and they're kind of difficult to, they're a pain in the ass to use. So just do your homework. Just do your homework when you, same as when you're getting your engine builder, do your homework. And yeah, I mean, because it's just a ruler. It's just a ruler.
So there we have it.
Yeah. I always feel weird after a rant. You know, like, you know, you've sort of had a good session with a missus and you're done and you're like that, and I'm spent. I'll go to sleep now.
Oh dear me, yes. Okay, cool, so.
No, I think it's not, I don't like the preachy way of saying education, but I think a lot of people don't realise the not even pitfalls, but the ins and outs of it all, because it's not your world, if that makes sense.
Mate, I mean, going back, I've been in and around dynos for like 20 plus, 25 years probably, for various work things, magazines and stuff. The amount of times I've been on dyno days and everybody's been stood behind the car.
Yeah.
And only takes a stone to come out of the tyre, anything.
Do you remember we done that perf with you, trying to get that video?
Pardon?
Yeah. But it wasn't even the noise, was it? It was like, what? Like you had to go and lie down.
Mate.
And you weren't even in anywhere dangerous, you were just near.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That was, yeah.
They're dangerous,
yeah.
They're dangerous. They are dangerous. You know, you try to be as careful as you can be, but even unstrapping the bloody things, because you've got them sat up on rollers, you know, this is why I always say, no, you don't have two people unstrapping a car. One person unstraps a car,
yeah.
Right? So say I'm behind that back wheel, pulling a strap out from under the rear arms, and one of the lads is in here helping, and he loosens the other strap and the car rolls back. He doesn't know whether my head's behind that wheel.
Yeah.
So I always say the same thing, one person unstraps a car, because then they've got complete control over what's going on, you know? So yeah, they're not nice. I don't like doing dyno days. I've never done one. I've had conversations about people doing them, and if I'm honest, if I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna make it so we charge, if you wanna come and hire my dyno, it's £150 now plus the VAT. So I need to charge that, especially if I'm going to do it on a Saturday and pay one of the guys to come and do it. A lot of people don't want to pay that, which is fine. But on the other hand, I don't really want to do it.
Yeah. Because
then it turns into I don't feel I can give someone a fair amount of my time. So when you come in and have a power run, we'll get the car in, we'll check it over, we'll strap it down, we'll warm it up, we'll run it through the gears, we'll put it through a load test, we'll do 3 pulls to do a measurement, and then me and the owner will sit down and talk about what we've measured, what they can do, what's this, what's that. And I feel on a dyno day, it would be like a smash and grab.
Yeah.
Get them through as quick as you can. I don't feel that I'd be giving you my full attention.
You also made the point with a lot of the cars that would want to come would need bumpers removing and things to fit on.
If it's supercar stuff, definitely. 720S, bumper off. Well, basically, not the bumper, diffusers. Most of McLaren's is rear diffuser off.
Yep.
Any R8 you can get on, but you'd have to take normally you've got to get the back of the under tray down. Same with Hurricanes. A lot of Ferraris is diffuser off, so it's a lot of hard work getting them in and out.
Yep.
Then if you start getting into some of the cars, you pick on a car, for example, and you start doing, I don't know, maybe like GTI Owners Club or stuff like that. They're either in that world where they don't want to pay that, or they it turns into a dick waving competition.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They want to stand around the back of the dyno, they want to Instagram everything, you know, the car scene kind of thing. And again, I don't really want to get involved with that either. So, not being negative, although that is very negative.
No, he's being realistic.
Yeah, I just don't feel I'd be giving value for money, I don't think.
Yeah.
So if it's that smash and grab kind of, can we get 15 cars through in a day? I I think there's probably more value for money by going somewhere else and coming to me. And on a Saturday, well, let's be honest, I'm not at home on a Saturday, I am here.
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
So there we go.
There we go. Don't buy a dyno. Don't buy a dyno. No, and that's what people don't understand as well. They go, cool, £150 an hour plus the VAT. And I'm like, yeah, it's a £150,000 dyno plus the VAT. Yeah. And then I've built the cell. So then you go, right, okay. So I reckon I had mates helping me do this. Sam and his brother Josh, they did that. It's MoTeC being, that window, the 2 panes of glass, and for Tom to do that window is £2,500. The door's another £1,000. The 2 controllers on the outside, they're like $3,000. Then we've wired it, the lights, the ducting was £5,000. So I reckon, I bought the dyno second hand. This was Litchfield's old dyno. They took it out the floor and they put a brand new one in, and I had this one. So I reckon I'm 160 to 170 grand in doing this. Because do you remember, that never used to be there, that door. We put the hole in the wall.
Of course, yeah.
And then put the door in, and then we put the ramp outside, up to the door. So it was a huge investment. It was a huge investment. So why would I undersell it?
Yeah.
I'd rather not put the mileage on it, if that makes sense, because like just to get it, so we get them calibrated every 6 months, it's 500 quid. What's the point of having a dyno that's not calibrated and not serviced? So then that's £1,000 a year running cost, plus the electric. You know, we just damage a strap. They're ratchet straps, but they carry a certain load in. So again, that's another 100 quid in a strap. And it's not a complaint. It's not sat here going, oh, poor old me with my expensive dyno. It's not that, but it's trying to give you an understanding of the value behind the machinery. Yeah. A client of mine, Neil, he's, what do you call when you do a cancer? Is it oncologist? Right.
Yeah.
But he specialises in robot, so keyhole surgery with robots.
Okay.
Right? And the robots are millions and millions and millions. And he says, just the plastic covers that go over the robot that are used every operation, it's £2,500.
Wow.
So every operation, then he goes, right, so you prep the room for an op and you put all the plastic sheets in, and then someone walks in who's not sterile. Yep. It all goes in the bin. And you're like, that's before you've even done anything else. Yeah. And I think like with a dyno, that's where people miss the underlying costs of what's what. Yeah. Which is then why there's a knock-on cost to how much it is. Then the other side of that is how much value I think I should give you for what I'm charging you. Yeah. If I just roll you in here, do one pull, give you a printout sheet, take your money and say, thanks very much, mate, off you go, you're not going to be happy. And which is what I think dyno days would turn into, which is why we've never done one. So yeah, just use it like that.
So there we have it.
Don't buy a dyno.
Anything else?
No. Honestly, it's like Misery City. Maybe we should just call it that. Miserable Mondays. No, it's not miserable. It's just trying to, like
show
with
the realities of things.
Yes, yeah. People, I think stuff like this, people don't understand the value behind it. Jord gets a real tough time because people think, well, let's just put in plastic sheet on a car, PPF. Yeah. And it's just a whole different, and it's education, it's understanding. So part of the job is to educate people on actually what is involved. You know, the amount of times I've watched him cut a piece of film, put it on a car, do all the work, get it finished, look at it and go, yeah, I'm not happy with that. Take it off and do it again at his cost because he can see something. Because of course, at the end of the day, you'll put in a piece of plastic, well, it's not just plastic, on a body panel, you get a bit of fluff off your jumper. Yep. And it shows up. So yeah, it's trying to spread the word of what goes on underneath, because I don't think not everybody understands. You know, you can't just become a car mechanic. You've got to go out and buy thousands of pounds worth of tools in the toolbox to do that job. You can't just be, you know, you can't just be a builder. You've got to go and buy equipment. And you can go to B&Q and buy a 60 quid cordless Makita drill, or you can go and spend 600 quid. And it's that 50 quid one won't last 10 minutes. So yeah, same kind of thing. But can I finish complaining now?
I think so. I think you need a nice
on
strong cup of tea.
On a happy note, what should we do on a happy note?
So we were just going to have a bit of a dyno chat, I think, weren't we? Because, well, we had this on dyno, and we'd never really spoken about the ins and outs of it. So this is Will's car that was in for a service, and we just done a few little bits on the calibration. I mean, strapped down, we thought we'd sort of show you around Le Dyno. Because I suppose most people don't really know how they work, what they do, what's involved.
People think it's magic sometimes.
Kind of magic.
Yeah.
It has got a magic trick. So if I do this, the dyno moves like so. So I would normally park the car like that. So drive it in, put the rear wheels on a stable base, pull the handbrake on, and then I can move the chassis to get the front wheels up on the top of the rollers. Yeah, so we're like that. Then we strap the car down, get the front straps on, get the rear straps on, set the dyno in the right position, making sure I don't twist the chains. Yeah, and that's it, she's good to run. So that's all done on the remote. Then we obviously have the software to set up. So if you stick your camera on there, mush, we can, obviously we've got different menus to set up. So we've got some special settings we've got to take notice of. So this is the main one we use, number 4, and this allows us to change the point at which the dyno starts measuring. So if, for example, I've got a DCT or an Artronic where you've got to have a certain road speed before you get 5th gear, then I make this number bigger to allow me to get up to speed to get 5th before the dyno starts measuring. In a manual, it's not so bad. So we normally 100%, where it is now is about 30 mile an hour, and I normally open it up on an Artronic or a DCT to about 40. The twin turbo stuff is this, we would play with this value, number 1, special setting number 1. And this modifies how long the run is. So MAHAs are renowned for having a very long run or very low ramp rate. So it takes a long time to do a run. On the big power stuff, they just get unhappy. So we would set that number quite a bit smaller to allow it to sweep, to pull through the run. So if you go and compare like our dyno pulls to say a dyno jet literally just goes, whereas ours are a lot longer pull. So you've just got to be careful with that. Then really we'd use one of 2 things to warm the car up. So we've got load simulation, we would use a constant traction, so I'd apply a set force on the car of like 500 newtons. So like it is now, I hit start and I just go on a drive cycle, and it's applying a load to the car. So rather than you not spinning, you spinning against nothing, you're putting a load on the car, because you shouldn't really have no load on an engine. You should always have something for it to push on. Then we can measure force on, so we've got front and rear wheel speed, RPM, intake air temp, oil temp, my lambda when I'm plugged into my analog box, which is over there. And then obviously you've got roller speed and roller force. So we would use that to warm the car up. If I was struggling with rear grip, so the other day we had an M3 on and it was just being a bugger to hook the tyres up, then what I'd do there is I'd go to a constant speed, I'd set a constant speed, and what that will do then is it'll allow the dyno rollers to go to that speed. And then when they get to that speed, it'll hold it back. So it'll hold the car at that speed. So what that allows me to do is say go into 4th gear, roll up on the dyno, 120 kilometers an hour, and then push on the dyno. And at first you get wheel spin. and then you'll start to warm the tyres up. So not enough to cause damage, but it just allows me to warm the tyres up if I can't hook.
Yeah.
So those are the two sort of functions we use in the simulation mode. You can do a constant RPM, you can do a driving simulation if you want to, but those are the two sort of functions I use to warm the car up and warm the tyres up before we do a pull.
Nice.
Then we would go into measure engine power. We do a continuous measurement, and this is where you set up your dyno then. So we're a petrol, we don't touch those, that's a Ryan problem at dark side. Then you've got a couple of options on how it calculates what's going on, so whether it's turbo or naturally aspirated. Manual transmission, even a DCT we would run in manual mode. So what this does is you'll finish your pull at your RPM and it'll ask you to put it in neutral.
Yeah.
Where it does an auto, because of how an auto drivetrain works, you'll do it in fifth, for example. You go to red line, then it'll ask you to shift up gears, take the car to a certain speed, and then go to neutral, and it'll do a coast down throughout your gear, and it'll calculate it back. We never like any slippage, so we say no slip. Then that's obvious. You've got front wheel drive, rear wheel drive, or four wheel drive. And this little value up here is the amount of slip we allow between front and rear.
Yep.
So if you try to run it too tight, the car can get upset because the system allows a certain amount of slip. And then other cars don't like any slip, so you run them locked, because remember, on a rear wheel drive on the R8, we're letting the car drive the rear, but because we've only got 120 newton meters of force at the front, if I let the car drive the front rollers, I'll burn a diff out.
Right.
So I've got 100% engine here,
yeah,
and I've probably got 70 to 80% dyno motor here.
Okay.
So my dyno's driving my front rollers. We're still measuring, but it can work out how much energy it's putting into the roller versus how much you're driving it against the rear. So we see a lot of problems with especially R8s where they get burnt out front diffs, and because they've been on a shit dyno, that they claim they're four-wheel drive and they burn a diff out.
Right.
So you need either a mechanically linked, so a dyno jet is a 4x4, but you can still have an unlinked 4x4 dyno jet. So you just got to make sure whoever you go to is a linked dyno.
Right.
So this is electronically linked with a big ass motor, both in the front and the rear.
Yeah.
So if I'm doing like a Golf R, it's the opposite. Engine drives the front rollers, motor supports the rear.
Right,
yeah.
so you've got both ends covered.
Both ends covered, yeah. Then the power class is what we call our ramp rate. So if I go to 200 horsepower, that's a really long ramp rate because of course it allows it holds it back more.
Yeah.
And then obviously as you get more power and more power and more power, you can't hold it back for the same length. So you've got to open it up to let the dyno accelerate faster.
Yeah.
Power correction, don't really get too involved in it, but it's essentially, Americans would normally use SAE.
Yeah.
We use DIN. Then you've got the inertia of the rollers and the wheels.
Where are we now?
Just down here, look.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, so that's an inputted value depending on wheel size. And then the bottom one is Haldex clutch. So whether you're telling dyno whether to expect the Haldex to cut in or not.
Right.
Because remember, a Quattro is like a fixed four-wheel drive, and then a Golf R or an RS3 or a Gen 2 R8 is fixed axle with a clutched secondary axle.
Yeah.
So the clutch will cut in and out. So if you're starting at the very beginning and the dyno's like, well, the front wheel's not driving or the back wheel's not driving, it'll drive them, and then all of a sudden the Haldex will cut in, and then it'll go, bloody hell, what's happened there? And it'll freak out. So at that little setting there, the dyno expects then at some point the car's going to jump in and out with drive, with torque to the axle. So that's fine. We'd hit continue, so we would do a rev match. If I'm using MoTeC or Syvecs, then we can link the RPM directly into the dyno via CAN bus. But 9 times out of 10 for stuff like this, I'll literally fifth gear. I like to use fifth. Certain cars don't like being that high vehicle speed, but we use fifth gear. We'll go to like 4,000 RPM on the rev counter, hold it at 4,000 RPM, and I'll rev match the dyno.
Right.
So I'll tell the dyno I'm doing 4,000 RPM. and it will go, oh right, that's X roller speed. It doesn't know what gear you're in. It just knows at 4,000 RPM in fifth, that's 4,000 RPM there.
Okay, yeah.
So you just got to use the same gear. And then we'd hit continue, and we would be at our measurement screen.
Right, okay.
We've got loads of videos of cars on the dyno anyway, haven't we? So
we have.
we must be able to drop one in.
We can drop something in,
yeah. So what I would do there is, on a manual, I would turn ESP all the way off, everything off.
Yeah.
Get it rolling, and I would literally go first burp, third burp, fifth burp, and then go 100% throttle, and hold it there until I don't like hit bouncing limiters. So I'll hold it there until I can just see the power start to nose off.
Yeah.
Knock it to neutral, and it will coast down, and then you let it coast all the way down, and then it will spit out a measurement. So if I show you power curves, something nice and simple. There you go. So that's an M3 we did the other day, out of the box with an exhaust on, hadn't tuned it yet. So you've got, that's, so go from the bottom. We've got what it measures at the dyno.
Yep.
We've got coast down loss. Hang on. We've got the cost of doing business. So that's the loss measured, the dyno measures after you've done a pull.
Yep.
So on the coast down, so that's the losses by your tyres to the rollers, wheels, wheel bearings, drive shafts, differential, prop shaft, gearbox, the lot. So that's on a two-wheel drive car, it's 70 to 80 horsepower. On say an R8, it'll be 120 to 130
right, okay.
four-wheel drive. So it basically takes your roller torque,
yeah,
because horsepower doesn't exist. It takes your roller torque, which is here, then obviously with a correction factor against your RPM, then gives you horsepower.
Yeah.
Adds your coast down loss, which gives you your engine power. Takes into account then your corrections.
Yeah.
To give you your normalized power up here. All right, so we make 452 corrected horsepower at 6,575 RPM, but that's not peak torque. Peak torque is 581 Newton meters at 4,875.
Yeah.
And that's it. And then what that gives me the ability to do is to make a change and then see what we get on the overlay. So if I load over the top, that one, if I curve selection, simplify it. So now look, you can see after we tuned it,
Yep.
how much our torque's increased, which has then given us how much our horsepower's increased.
Okay, and we've gone up to
hang on, cursor. Bottom number
485.
520,
Sorry.
just under 525.
Cool.
But the peak torque look now versus 574.
Big difference.
Yeah.
And what was that? An
Little M3. F80 M3.
F80, right, so obviously turbo,
Yeah. So natural aspirators, you won't gain that much.
Yeah, of
but
course,
turbos, you're good. And for me, I don't get involved in what anyone else's dyno reads. So all that is my ruler.
Yeah.
So I'm not interested in what the numbers are, just the delta gains.
Yeah. It's not willy waving numbers, is it? It's a
Couldn't give a
tool
toss.
to measure.
Yeah. Not interested. Because then the other side of it is, everybody freaks out about number at the top. It's area under the curve. That's what wins your races.
Yeah.
It's never peak power. So, and then it's just looking after the car really then. So we've got big extraction at the back to pull the air out from the back of the car.
Serious bit of extraction. Yeah.
We've got fan at the front, which obviously feeds air to the front, and then we've got two side feed fans. Porsches are very, very difficult to manage, so you've got to watch how you do those because obviously everything's in the back. The R8s are easier because the cooling package is in the front, but we need to feed the side pods to feed the airboxes.
Yeah.
If I was going to make the dyno again, I would make that gap bigger because you can see it's pretty tight.
Yep.
So I'd make the gap between here and the front of the car bigger. I'd have 2 of these, and I'd have a shroud. I'd have a Venturi shroud off it, because sometimes it kind of splashes, the air kind of splashes off the car. But yeah, that's it really. I mean, I think the next one we'll do some logging and how we break the logging down. But we've done a logging video before, and it didn't kind of.
Yeah, I think
people didn't really geek out over it.
I think what would be quite cool is if we had a car come in and we can actually diagnose things with it.
Yeah, that'd be a lack of power thing. Yeah, we can almost catch on to that.
Something comes in and you work out whether it's a boost leak or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But you don't know before we start the video.
No, that's the problem. Like you would have said, we did that E63 a while back.
Yeah.
And that came in, that had a problem, and we diagnosed it on the dyno.
Yeah.
And all right, the guy took it away to fix it because his workshop had cocked up. But yeah, other stuff. I can get V8s on here, and I'll do a pull, and I'm like, oh bloody hell, it's not a vacuum leak. The one-way valve and the inlet manifold's gone.
Yeah.
And we've seen so many of them now that's 20 minutes on the dyno and it's fixed. Because what happens is when you open the throttle at low RPM, you get a big vacuum in the inlet manifold, so that pulls the manifold flaps open, that controls your exhaust, all sorts. But then as the RPM increases and the vacuum decays inside the inlet manifold, what happens is then the vacuum system loses its vacuum because the there's no one-way valve allowing the vacuum to stay in the vacuum system, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It balances out with the inlet manifold. And that causes problems then where the vacuum's not in the system to control the inlet manifold flaps, so they start to close in because it's vacuum that holds them open.
Sure.
Then you get stuff like where your exhaust messes around, or the secondary air valves mess around, stuff like that. So yeah,
good stuff.
Little bits and pieces pop up. Bad fuel, that's easy to diagnose on the dyno because normally cars will have knock issues.
Yeah.
But yeah, the main advantage of this for us was never to sell tunes or to sell tuning. It was to support us doing the twin turbo stuff and running our engines in.
Sure.
So
good stuff.
It's all good fun.
Happy days.
All right. I think we've done another little bit the other day, didn't we? Which we're going to bolt in. So
that was more of the ranty side of it.
Yeah. So I think we must have some cool videos. We must have like Hurricane or an Aventador or something on the dyno.
With flames coming out.
Yeah.
So I'll drop that in.
Should we drop them in? Drop a couple of them in, Dav.
Will do.
Smash the buttons. Tell us what I did wrong. And yeah, we see you on the next one.
See you.